Hello everyone, welcome for this new WebMardi. I'm really happy to be with you tonight. So as usual, we will start with the intro and then we're going to have the talk from Joseph. We will have the question and answers and then we will announce the next WebMardi. Regarding the questions, please use the comments on YouTube channels or on Twitch to ask your question, and we will ask those questions. We will moderate those questions and then ask those questions to the speaker at the end of his talk. So the WebMardi. I'm sure most of you already know what the WebMardi is all about, but maybe there are some new people there. So the WebMardi is an association and we do meetups about the web. It could be about design, project management, dev, whatever. And we usually do those events every first Tuesday of each month. We are 4 people which are running that association. And we are doing those events online at the moment. But usually we do the event in real life in Fribourg, Lausanne, or Geneva. So usually on the west side of Switzerland. We have really awesome sponsors, Liip and Antistatic. They help us to basically do those events. So thanks to both of them for supporting the WebMardi. We are also partner of JetBrains and Smashing Magazines. Tonight, we welcome Joseph. He will talk about sustainable open web with Drupal. Hello, Joseph.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being there. Are you ready for your talk?
Yes, I should be.
Awesome. So I'll let you talk. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the welcome. I'm excited. I've heard about the WebMardi for ages. I must admit, I'm not a French speaker, so I will need your help with translating. Yeah, and I've known Kevin, one of the organizers, for a couple of years. So thanks for inviting me to have this talk here. It's the first time I'm talking about sustainable open web with Drupal. So please send me your feedback after the talk so I can continue to evolve it. And let's get started. Just about me, my name is Josef Kruckenberg, but I mostly go online with my nickname Dasio. I'm originally from Vienna in Austria, and I moved to Switzerland 2014, so like 7 years ago. The reason why I moved to Switzerland was I got a little bit bored in Austria, and I found a job at Amazing Labs. Yeah, so in that sense, Drupal already brought me to Switzerland, and Drupal has been part of my career and my journey for a couple of years. So I'll try to reflect on that in this talk. What else can you know about me? I'm excited about cycling, the mountains. I just spent some time in Corsica. So that was really beautiful on next to the sea and in the mountains. And recently I'm a father of 2 kids, so that also keeps me very busy. Let's see what we'll talk about today. So first of all, I would like to give you a quick intro, why sustainability, why the open web, and why Drupal. And then I would like to walk you through some episodes. So basically that's small snippets of experiences that I had in that field, where I would like to quickly mention what has happened, what were kind of achievements I celebrate, and what were maybe some learnings or takeaways. Hopefully they also apply to your field. I will say the talk is quite broad. It mentions topics like sustainability, that can be a lot of things. It mentions the open web. It mentions the technology Drupal. So I hope Either if you're into technology, you can get some things away from it, but also if you work more broadly in creating websites or in creating open solutions, I hope there will be some takeaways. Feel free to raise your questions. I'm sure the WebMarty team will collect them and we can talk about it later. So also quickly mentioning Liip, we're sponsoring the WebMarty, and it's the company that I'm working with only since December last year. Liip is spread all across Switzerland. We are almost 200 employees, very purpose-driven. One thing that attracted me to work with Liip was that diversity and inclusion is very high for the tech sector. Another thing that attracted me is the level of self-organization, both in Agile and Scrum, but also using Holacracy to self-evolve the organizational structure without managers. So if you're interested in that, check out our jobs. But now let's get into the topic. Why sustainability, open web, and Drupal? I'd like to quickly share some definitions. So sustainability is the capacity to endure in a relatively ongoing way across various domains of life. I think for me in the agency business, sustainability is often a challenge, because in let's say when we work in the agency doing client work, often it's shorter projects. So how can we make our solutions sustainable is certainly a question I keep raising. Or I think also in the tech sector, we often see people burn out. So how can we work together in a sustainable way are things that motivate me in that area. The open web. What's that actually? I didn't want to write open source because while I have some coding background, I don't develop anymore. But I think openness can be applied in many senses. The open web definition mentions also open standards, democratic concepts like free expression and digital inclusion. Yeah, I think the main idea for the open web is that it's available for anyone. So when I speak about openness, it might lead to solutions that help everyone access the web or help everyone contribute to the web. But it might also be the way we work together or the way we share our solutions, even for competitors to pick up on and improve it together. I think that's all exciting concepts. And then what is Drupal? So Drupal is a free and open source web content management framework. So maybe compare framework to system. It's not a ready-made solution that out of the box gives you all the features, but it's more a framework of different pieces that you can quickly put together. Very powerful, written in not the modernist language, in PHP, and distributed under a copyleft open license under the GPL, which helped drive the project forward. Drupal exists for over 20 years already. I got started with Drupal in 2007, so I've been around for a while. And the reasons why I'm still with Drupal is not only the technology that's very powerful, but also mainly the community. Who uses Drupal? So, for example, 3 out of the 4 vaccine providers use Drupal. So it's very popular in big businesses. But Drupal also has a lot of history in grassroots movement, in politics. And if you look a little bit more down below on that slide, you can see that, for example, I'm the product owner now on Freitag, one of our bigger clients. And Liip also works, for example, together with the Zoo of Zurich, with Zurich Tourism, Mobiliar. A lot of customers rely on Drupal as a technology platform. Maybe if you want to play some guess games, I could ask you, do you know how much market share Drupal has? I'm also happy to answer that question at the end if it comes up. So why all these topics together? Well, I found these, like the sustainability, the openness, and the connectedness of the community, that these are values that resonate with me and the work that I'm doing. Drupal has turned out to be a very versatile tool that helps to get the job done, but it also has turned out to be a very evolving ecosystem with the community, with everything around it that really shaped my career. So in this talk, I would like to bring these experiences together. Not saying that everyone should do Drupal, but maybe these kind of patterns or learnings that I've acquired in that system also apply to your fields. And if you're interested in Drupal, obviously check it out, or let me know if you have questions around it. Also wanted to share a quick slide about, let's say, my journey. This was very forming in a sense that I spent a year in Nicaragua in Central America. So instead of doing the military service in Austria, I found an opportunity to do a service abroad. And I worked for this cultural center. And they already had a Drupal website in 3 different languages. Cultural centers, what do they need? They need like events, calendars, news, different projects. So it's a very organic website. And I helped to rebuild it in the back in the days. This was Drupal 6 was the latest version. So that got me a lot of experience, but also in that time I was able to connect with different open source communities from Debian, Ubuntu, and a lot of other fields in all over Central America. I think I found one of my passions is kind of sharing excitement, being like an advocate or teacher of open source technologies. So I did this tour through Central America, connecting with a lot of open minds and teaching them Drupal. Now let's get into the talk. The first episode that I would like to share is how I developed and maintained a module. So a module is an extension in Drupal that you can basically use like a plugin that adds some functionality. So back in that time, I was working with a startup that focused specifically on one product. The product was called Recruiter. So the Recruiter distribution, it's kind of a Drupal distribution, similarly as a Linux distribution focused on a specific use case. So with the Recruiter product, we were able to build job platforms. Like jobs.ch would be one example of it. It's not built with Recruiter, but job boards like this are built with Recruiter, and that's based on Drupal. And we found a couple of pieces that we contributed back as part of this distribution. And one of the pieces where identified was rather straightforward. So when you have all these filters in a faceted search, like on Amazon or in any of the marketplaces where you can search, you can use faceted search. The URLs were not so good looking or not so SEO friendly. So the module that I implemented would turn your search filters into nicely looking URLs, which turned out to be like an overseeable problem, not such a super easy problem because there were different underlying modules to integrate with. There were several competing approaches to build searches in Drupal. And in the end, I came up with this module as part of our distribution. We integrated it. The module had some good uptake because it was part of a larger ecosystem. And we reached 8,000 active installations with that module. So that really felt to me like a successful integration. Also got a lot of good feedback from other developers, was able to shape the API in ways that you could extend the module. And over time, when I kind of like realized, okay, after 1 or 2 years, I didn't want to maintain it anymore, I was also able to find co-maintainers And eventually, for the later version of Drupal 8, it got basically rebuilt. So the module still exists in the newer version, which is exciting. And during that time, I really learned how to take care of support requests, how to shape an API that it's reusable. One thing I found is that if you make it very extensible, it also doesn't encourage everyone to contribute back, because they can just extend it in their own custom code. So that's maybe something as a developer you could consider. How can I encourage, if it's extendable, still to contribute those extensions back? Yeah, and I think I found a good way of using a plugin-based extension mechanism so that you can translate different filter types to different URLs. That turned out to be a good learning for me. Now, on to the next point. Funding open source work. As part of this mentioned distribution, we were also working on the rules module. So the rules module was created by my co-worker, Fago or Wolfgang. And the rules module is like so you can create events. Those are kind of the triggers. Then you can define different conditions, and then you can define different actions. So based on that kind of this rule sets that you can click together in the user interface, people were really able to customize the behavior of the website in a very powerful and Drupal-like way. That's also typically tasks that are close to the customer or to the site administrators, who don't necessarily write code, but they would like to be able to customize the emails that are going out, or they would like to customize in e-commerce sites how the discount logic works and so forth. So 30% of all the Drupal 7 installations use the rules module. And we found out that we would like to continue this, but it's a lot of work to rebuild it for Drupal 8, which was a major upgrade for all the underlying technology. So knowing that this is going to be, we estimated 1,000 hours of work that we would need to do to just upgrade the module, we founded an initiative that was basically a crowdfunding. And as part of that crowdfunding, we raised 30K euros, or 30,000 euro were raised. We also organized dozens of sprints and meetings to drive forward the initiative. So I think for some part, this initiative was kind of successful, but then we realized that even though we were able to raise 2/3 of the required money, we didn't have the right skills at hand, or the right people to work, that we could give the money to work on that module. It turned out it was something that was really nice to have, but it was not essential, because you can basically, if you need to implement a notification email, if you need to implement some discount logic, you can always do it in custom code. So in the end, this whole initiative kind of stalled, which let me realize that it's not only sufficient to come up with this let's say marketing around the funding initiative, but you also need to have a let's say a business case around further maintaining that module. And we knew that the money flow wouldn't continue after that crowdfunding. So basically we ditched the idea. The module is still maintained now by another developer who stepped up from the community. But certainly the high goals that we have set in the beginning to really accelerate the upgrade of this module didn't succeed, even though we learned a lot through the funding campaign. next up is one question that I saw a lot in the agency work when basically shifting from a product-focused agency to a services-focused agency, where you usually build like customer sites and not one product. That it was much harder to do innovation there. Just because the reusability of the use cases that the clients have, if you don't build a product, but if you build individual boutique style solutions for customers, it was really hard to find that. But on the other hand, when I took over this deputy head technology position at Amazing Labs, I knew that I don't have the deep technical skills to really drive the development practices so much forward. So I hired a colleague from Austria, Sebastian, as our backend lead, and Sebastian drove the initiative to build decoupled sites with us. So in the past, we always built the sites integrated. That is, that the PHP, the backend, also delivers the HTML using Twig, Symfony, similarly as the Symfony framework. And we realized this is like some of the customers have higher expectations, want more interactivity, or some of the front-end developers want to use more modern front-end technologies. So Sebastian drove that initiative to build decoupled sites. And during that initiative, we had a lot of, I would say, forming achievements. We staffed a team to work with Ringier Axel Springer on a big project that really made the decoupled architecture shine. So they have one backend to drive different front ends. Let's say the Beobachter, the Gourmillon, all of these magazines or these brands are driven by one content hub, and that really made sense for them to use GraphQL as a middleware. After a couple of years, we can now see that 2,400 sites are actively using that GraphQL module, and it also has been considered for inclusion to Drupal core. We can see that Amazing Labs has extended the portfolio into the React and decoupled space. And with that technology stack, we also worked for, let's say, high-profile customers like the University of Heidelberg or the Swiss Paraplegic Group. So it was kind of hard to install that innovation, because in the beginning it needs a lot of time and energy and the willingness to take risks. And what we also found out is that, well, the less innovation you do on a daily basis, the more difficult it is to create that space. So just would encourage you to really make sure that you do innovate if it fits your strategy. For us, in that sense, it was certainly high steps to climb, but then it also played out really well, that we knew, okay, this also really gets good recognition. It allows us to build better solutions. Yeah. So that's for that. Continuing on to the next episode. How to enable clients and teams to use open source. One of the main questions we usually face is, should we build it custom or use existing building blocks? I think for the customers, it's nice to point out, hey, with Drupal you get a lot of features out of the box, or you use this kind of module. Just install it. We can make some adaptations, and the return on investment is therefore usually very high. But then customization, if you know the system well, you can also customize it very well. We kind of realized that when you want to build something reusable, it takes more effort and time. But then on the other hand, it also makes maintenance easier, because it's not that it's just custom code that is only installed for this customer, but you can share the bug fixing. You can share the further development with the other projects you do, but also that the projects that the community does. So I think in this field, another challenge that we see is that often development teams, they need to decide, okay, can I really customize this piece of functionality, or do I need to fork it? Basically copy the code to be able to effectively modify it. And sometimes we realize that after forking it, well, we cannot update it anymore, or it's very costly. So yeah, that's typically the challenges that we see with sites put together based on different open source pieces. I think what I really celebrated is that when we convinced the clients and the team to build a solution as a contributed module, it also raised the self-esteem for the team and for the customers, feeling that, okay, now we give something back. It's a reusable solution that also others contribute to. Or at that moment when a developer says, yeah, I didn't even remember that I filed this issue in the open source issue queue or in my own module, but now someone found a fix for that. So that's really the moments where you see, okay, it really pays back. Learning was that it's vital to understand the stability and maturity of underlying system dependencies. So it's easy to put together all of these powerful building blocks that Drupal or other systems provide, but sometimes they do some magic, and if you don't understand what the implications of the magic are, then maybe you run into performance problems, maybe you run into upgrade problems, maybe you run into problems with the data structure. So while I can encourage everyone to use those powerful building blocks, I think it's also vital to understand the implications they bring. Yes. Going one further. So how can we balance sustainability in the agency life? There was certainly a question that I thought about a lot. One thing that I experienced at the beginning of joining Amazing Labs was that we kind of struggled with the ownership on the projects. And one of the reasons for that was that people were just assigned to projects on a weekly basis, depending on where is a need, where is an availability of a development resource. So what we did was we hired some coaching, and we introduced Scrum. The way we introduced Scrum at Amazing was with fixed teams. So we had one team usually working on multiple customer projects. And that also led to me shifting my own role. So I think in the beginning, I was mostly a technical coordinator, dispatching or like preparing tickets, dispatching tickets to developers, reviewing them. And then later I got more into a coaching and consultant role. One achievement I would like to celebrate in that phase is getting the feedback from freelance developers that worked with us, that they saw the best Scrum implementation in their career so far. Another achievement I would like to celebrate is letting go of tasks I didn't like. So, for example, back then was the project management role that I got burned out of, or then later on it was the management tasks that I didn't like anymore. So I think for me that kind of led to a more sustainable approach. I also was able to establish and enact roles that focused more on the topics that I care about. So, for example, at Unic, I was a diversity inclusion advocate. I created a role for the Drupal community link, basically interfacing with the open source community, or enacted roles like the Scrum Master and the Agile Coach. A learning for me in that area certainly is that top management isn't a culture that works for me. So basically, of course, one of the reasons also why I work at Liip. And finding roles that suit my character has helped me also find balance with myself and the world around me. I think sometimes, even though, let's say, you're in this position of being the manager who is in charge of everything, maybe for me, I figured out at that time, it wasn't the right choice for me to do, or not the right environment for me. So finding that balance with me, I think, also helped the others around me. Almost to the last topic I would like to talk about today, recruitment in the open source world. So being in that role of like responsible for the development teams, one of the questions that we talked a lot about is that I think, as many agencies in Switzerland, we are figuring out, can we find local talent, or do we need to find people that work with us remotely, or do we even prefer to work remotely? A tendency that we see in the market for sure is that the salaries in Switzerland are very high, and a lot of agencies are outsourcing worldwide. I think at the same time we see that the teams, and especially the customers, they really like that they can work with local talent. So I think that's also one of the areas where Liip shines. Is we only have the whole team in Switzerland. So as a customer, you can expect the people you work with speak your language, or be at least geographically close to you. So in the recruitment, I was able to hire a lot of folks with the Mazy Labs. That was folks to work with us on site, but also remotely, as we transitioned to a hybrid team with basically 50% of the works remotely. I think being able to work with those experts beyond physical borders also, for me, opened a lot of opportunities, like being able to find the right talent for specific niches like Drupal is, or also to broaden your horizon in terms of diversity, like speaking different languages, understanding other cultures. Also, it turned out for me to be valuable. But I also found myself and my peers that the switch to mixed remote and on-site teams is quite challenging. Like, especially, I mean, I think now with COVID and with the partial returns to the offices, probably everyone is experiencing that. We were experiencing that you have part of the teams that discuss things over the table, and part of the teams that rely on online communication channels. I would say it's certainly doable if you want that. It will kind of change your culture, I think, and it is also quite complex topic how to organize it legally. I think in the end, for recruitment, for me, the open source factor really always played a very important role. Folks who have experience in contributing to Drupal they kind of automatically have a higher standard, because when they work in the issue queues online, they get like very quality feedback, and there's very high standards. In like, the closer you work to Drupal core, for example, the more higher standards you will need to follow. So that was certainly a quality criteria, and being able to work with those through the connections we have in the Drupal community turned out to be very valuable for me. with that, I think we are through the different episodes I wanted to mention. And I think I'm ready to hand it back to the WebMarty team. Thanks to all the listeners, and looking forward to hear if you have any questions recorded, or otherwise also feel free to follow up asynchronously with me.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for the talk. Really, really interesting talk. I have a few questions for you. Mostly mine, but still people on the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I will gather them still. One of them, so the first one is, so during your time you're contributing by code to Drupal, by modules or even core contribution or patches, how did you manage or schedule your open source time? Did you have any tools or any tips for people trying to contribute?
So I think back then I was I wasn't doing much apart from the issue queue was basically the place I would work in. So I think the task management tool was basically the issue queue that for Drupal we have on Drupal.org. It's not as modern as GitLab, but Drupal.org is also now transitioning to GitLab. But basically you have kind of tasks. And I think it also really depends on the phase you're in. Like when I was a maintainer, I was partly working for the agency. I was partly studying. And I think I had more free time than now, being a father of 2 kids. Yeah. And it was also part of our work. It was certainly not, I didn't do all the contribution as part of work, because I also felt like it would maybe take too much time, and I just had fun doing it in my free time. I think nowadays I would try to do this differently. I was mostly relying on emails to see what's happening, going through the issue queue, and like organizing tasks by priority. Yeah,
and you never felt
not like something super high fancy.
Yeah, no, but you never felt overwhelmed by, I don't know, issues or mails from people using the modules. Never felt like that, or never.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think that I was just browsing through this module in the recent days when I prepared the talk. And looking back now, how I responded to certain support requests, I think I was trying to be correct, but maybe I was not very verbose. I think you could, from even better maintainers, you could expect that they answer with even more empathy and so forth. I was trying to help people, but I was, I think, also considerate of my own energy and time. I also mentioned that in the end I found co-maintainer and stepped off my maintainer role. So that's usually the thing that I do when I'm not, when I don't feel the passion anymore, or when I get overwhelmed by the complexity of the work. I try to onboard others, or let the initiative also die. Is also an option. But I think for some of the, let's say, there's a couple of modules I've checked that I created. A couple of them are still maintained by others, which is great to see. Cool. So that was my strategy, to just let go.
Yeah. The question, thank you. And the question is, how do you sell open source to your clients? What are your arguments? Because I always struggle to find proper arguments to sell. Okay, this part of the project we can open source it, or we can contribute to that module instead of coding it by yourself.
Right.
What do you say? What do you use? Or what did you say?
I mean, I think it depends a little bit on what it is. If it's something where we know issues could come up, let's say, for example, I don't know, let's take an LDAP authentication into account. Like we know there's open source solutions for that. So, and it's like usually system integrations are kind of complex. Like I wouldn't suggest a customer to build this custom. And I think many customers will understand that sharing this complexity with others makes sense, because it's also a very common use case. And then, for example, we had, let's say, translations. Translations is a topic where you usually need to integrate with another translation agency. And often we find people just copy pasting Word files for translations. So then we would encourage them to automate that process with an XLIF export import. That's also something you can do out of the box with the contributed module. But then if you want an even better integration, let's say you want to synchronize translation jobs with the API that the translation agency has, that usually is like a web service integration where it really depends. Let's say, I don't know, Google Translate, Microsoft Translations, or even Swiss translation providers. Sometimes they already have a Drupal plugin, sometimes not. So I think in this area, we can tell the customer there's already an API for it, that the translation process is quite straightforward. Are you willing to, or sometimes we just don't ask them and just open source it. Depends a little bit. But if we know that it will create reasonable more effort, then it's, let's say, a negotiation game. In the past, we also decided to say, hey, we will give you a discount. We would just make it cheaper because it will may be more fun for us to work on it open source. Sometimes it will be clear to the customer that they want to have this fixed upstream, and so they don't have to maintain it. So it really, really depends. I know it also doesn't always convince even our teams to work open source, because it's extra work. So I think yes, we have to convince the customer, but yes, we also, I think, have to convince our internal teams to work in the open.
And I have a question about that. Not the next one, but to continue on the same. Sure. When you open part of the project or modules or anything, you have to open source, or you want to open source it. Do you think it will always take more time or more energy from the team, or sometimes, I mean, because often when you will open source something, you will need to think about more your edge case or more case, because that's not only your project, but more projects. So you will create APIs, stuff like that.
Yep.
And that's why you do that kind of discount.
I think it's kind of a skill that you need to practice to get the return on invest, because if you only open source from time to time, it's really hard. Like when you only drive the car once a year, it's kind of hard to remember how to pull the brake, how to release the module, like it's just a couple of steps that for people who are used to work with open source, they feel natural, and they see that when they maintain multiple projects and they have the same problems, they want to fix it in a way that they don't have to maintain it a couple of times. So I think it's up to finding the right, let's say, even overview of what are the pieces that we are building. Like having, I think the most successful open source contribution that I found with strong leadership from technical architects like Sebastian Fubi or Liip, who worked with us at Amazy, finding those reusable plugins, or Sascha Eckenberger, who is now with Unique, who created his own theme for editors, because he knows all the editors, they want to see something exciting. It's the first experience the customer has working with the site. So why not build this in a reusable manner?
Way, yeah, right.
Because we have the problem for every customer. If it's a one-off or 2 times thing, maybe open sourcing really depends. Like if you're used to it, it will be really quickly. If it's the first time you do it, yes, it takes time to get used to it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Perfect. What do you answer to people asking you, where should I start to contribute back to open source? What should I do?
Yeah, I started reading the issue queues and the source code, and but I think most effectively I was able to move forward finding a mentor that that kind of hand-holded me creating my first patch, because the patch workflow back then was rather complicated, or the APIs of the system were also rather complicated. So I think finding those mentoring moments turned out to be very positive for me. In Drupal, there is contribution events, for example, around all the DrupalCons, the big events, but there's also contribution events online. I think there's probably so many ways to get started. For me, finding a live event where you pair with others on similar problems or the problems that you're excited about, and they just mentor you. I think that turned out to be, most forming.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Continue with the contribution you made. Which is the you are most proud of?
Mm-hmm. I'm for sure proud of the work we've done with the DrupalCon program. So I've done a lot of work in the Drupal events area. So we've organized Drupal camps in Austria, in Switzerland with hundreds of attendees, but the DrupalCon is with thousands of attendees. And for that, I was responsible for I was the chair of all the program tracks, and that is usually like being able to shape the content of such a conference felt very rewarding, and also I took a lot of pictures that kind of document how the open source community works, and that I think those are 2 areas I'm quite proud of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which are not necessarily related to coding or to knowing the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's really more the open source spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. My last question is a tough one, maybe. We see a lot of open source contributors having troubles to balance personal life and OSS. Do you have any advice? Because I see a lot of people having troubles to deal with toxic people, or having burnout because working too much, too hard, etc., etc. Do you have any advice or tips or anything?
I think it's we all feel a lot of pressure in the digital space, especially in open source. I think we quickly feel a responsibility to, like, everyone just is great at contributing and everyone is relying on our solution, and I think there's also, you mentioned, like, toxic behavior in digital spaces or in communities where, I don't know, there's people that don't speak nicely, or there's sexual harassment. There's a lot of problems in especially in the tech online spaces. We have also seen people burned out or people leave the Drupal community for various of those reasons. So my advice is that when you see that you try to be an ally. So that could be, I don't know, let's say someone gets, you kind of notice that there's sexual harassment. I think it's important to make sure that it's heard, that it's not tolerable, to try to make the community a safer place. If you feel for yourself that you have troubles balancing personal life and open source, I think I found many people feel at home in the open source community, or I think at certain points I've also felt a lot home in those communities. So the question is, does that home work for me, or do I need to take care of myself in other ways? And depending on what the answers are to those questions, I think in the end you need to make sure that your personal life is in good shape, so that you can well interact with others. And the ways to get your personal life into good shape are manifold. Like sometimes it's just taking a break, managing the flow of information to yourself in a better way. I think, there's, let's say, so in the Drupal community, for example, we have a community working group, and I'm part of the community health team. I'm not super active there, but just wanted to mention that there's also structures in established open source communities that want to provide you with
help.
Let's say mechanisms when there's conflict. We have conflict resolution, but it really depends on what the actual troubles are. Is it something that we can mediate? Is it something that you just overloaded with your own work? Then probably it's I think giving up on your personal life is maybe not always the right thing to do. But if you're just happy doing the work, it's sometimes it's hard to acknowledge what the real problems are. But I'm sure, let's say, by talking to more experienced people or people that have seen more, maybe they can also give you some advice what they see.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. I think it was the last question we had. So thank you very much, Josef, for your talk again. And I will take back right now and terminate this webinar. So see you soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
So people, let's finish the webinar and we will announce it. The next one will be about typeface, so typography, more design talk. So if you know designers, UX designer, UI designer, or anyone who interested into design or visual stuff, please tell them. It will be our first on-site meetup. Maybe we hope we will be able to do it on site. Still, we will still have the streaming, so don't be afraid if you are not in Switzerland. You will be able to follow the streaming on YouTube, and it will be held by Daniela Retna from, I don't remember the company. Anyway, it will be on the meetup card. It's on 7th of September. Still say to people, I think it will be pretty awesome, and it will be online. It will be on site, so come if you can. We'll have to wear a mask, obviously. We will communicate everything about the COVID solution we have on the meetup website. If you have any question, feel free to ask us on contact@webmali.ch. We'll answer you with pleasure. We are still looking for website maintainers, so if you're interested into coding the WebMali website or helping us in any way, contact us also. If you have any ideas for websites that could enhance the experience, the website, or anything to come to the the event, please tell us. And if you want any other roles for WebMRD, if you have any ideas, or if you want to contribute to WebMRD, please tell us. We welcome you. And we appreciate any help you may have. Two last slides. Liip is looking for developers, software developers in Freiburg, Bern, and Zurich, PHP, Python, as you can see. Feel free to write to them on liip.ch/jobs. Could be just awesome. And the last slide I have for you today is Antistic is hiring also a full stack developer, so more HTML, PHP, and JavaScript people. So still also, if you can contact them on antistic.net/jobs. Thank you everyone for attending tonight. I think I will leave you here. If you are not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe and use the bell for the next event if you don't receive any notification and stuff like that. And I hope to see you on for the next WebMRD online or on site in Lausanne. And see you soon, people. Bye-bye. Take care.